What else is out, Mark?
So biggie out this week, Avengers Assemble, which apparently has already taken 2.5 million since it opened yesterday, which is the third biggest opening of all time for a Thursday. We were talking before about Cabin in the Woods, and the name which kept coming up was Joss Whedon, although he didn't direct it. He's thought very much as the autorial influence behind it. So this is essentially the superheroes hits on 45. What happens is that Loki, bad guy from Thor, has entered the world. He has awful things to do. He has stolen the cube, which actually, not unlike the old Spark, seems to have the capacity to split worlds asunder. One superhero isn't going to be enough to rein in the threat, so we have to get the Avengers Initiative, which consists of Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Incredible Hulk, Black Widow, Hawkeye, all led by Nick Fury. Here is a clip.
It's an impressive cage. Not built, I think, for me.
Built for something a lot stronger than you.
Oh, I've heard. A mindless beast. Makes play he's still a man. How desperate are you? You call on such lost creatures to defend you.
How desperate am I? You threaten my world with war. You steal a force you can't hope to control. You talk about peace, and you kill because it's fun. You have made me very desperate. You might not be glad that you did.
Ooh, burns you to have come so close. To have the Tesseract, to have power, unlimited power. And for what? A warm light for all mankind to share. And then to be reminded what real power is.
Well, let me know if real power wants a magazine or something.
So, I mean, what you have, Joss Whedon, you've got Seamus McGarvey as DP, you've got an extraordinary cast, a massive amount of money, and already a huge box office taking. Here's the thing with Avengers Assemble, Marvel Avengers Assemble, which is an incredibly uncomfortable title in order to distinguish it from the Avengers. Firstly, I did like it. I enjoyed it, and the fact of the matter is it's a movie made, again, we were saying this about Cabin in the Woods, by somebody who is a fan, somebody who likes the material, somebody who has a genuine enthusiasm for the characters, somebody who's clearly enjoying themselves telling the story, despite the fact that the pencil they're wielding to tell that story is a great big multi-million dollar affair, and there's an awful lot of bulk and stuff to get through. The problem with any group superhero movie is that you always have the situation in which, effectively, if you've got all these different superheroes, they end up battling each other to some extent for screen time. Whereas in any movie in which you have a single character doing the, usually isolated, going through some trauma, experiencing some kind of transformation, and then emerging at the other end of it with some superhero power, what you have here is all the constituent elements all being rounded up and brought together, and then battling to some extent for supremacy on screen, despite the fact that actually Tom Hiddleston as the villain is perhaps, arguably the most magnetic presence. I thought that what they did was a pretty good job of managing to marshal that. I mean, it's a long film, and it certainly feels like a long film because you've got so many characters to deal with. And Woody Allen once said, if you make a musical, the musical's going to be 2.5 hours long because songs take up time. Well, so does, even the smallest amount of character backstory. The standouts would probably be Mark Ruffalo, who actually brings something to the Hulk that to some extent puts to rest all the problems that they've had with dealing with the Incredible Hulk in the past, although they still haven't quite solved the stretchy pants problem. There is this weird thing that when he's wearing normal clothes, then he transforms, and but hang about why the trousers haven't exploded. I don't quite get why now he's back there, now he's and that is a fundamental problem with the Incredible Hulk, is they're never going to get around the stretchy pants
What
issue.
is it you want to see on screen?
I want
consistency.
I want consistency. I want if your shirt explodes, then what's happening to your shirt? It is a problem. You go from being somebody who's that side. But what Mark Ruffalo does, as he says, of course, it's motion capture, and the idea is that therefore there is a consistency of character between him as the scientist racked with trouble and guilt, and the raging, jolly green giant in the stretchy pants. And I do think that what Mark Ruffalo has managed to do is to make that character less ridiculous than it has been in the past. And that is, I think, to some extent, something of a triumph. There is a problem as well, which is that if you've got Iron Man, you've got Robert Downey Jr. Doing that fast-talking Robert Downey Jr. stuff, because every minute that he's on, he's really great. And his scenes with Mark Ruffalo are very good. You also then have things like, Hawkeye and people whose powers seem to be what you can crouch high up and you have a bow and arrow. That's not such a great power. All those problems recognising all those problems, it is therefore to the film's great credit that actually, generally, it's a sort of romping roller coaster ride. You are engaged. It is funny. I mean, it passes the comedy test. I did laugh more than 6 times, and it's an action adventure superhero movie. I did have a problem with the 3D. A lot of the film, some of the subject matter is dark, but the opening of the film is dark. I mean, it's particularly dark and craggy. And the fact of the matter is, when you get something like 30% light loss, I did spend at least the first 10, 15 minutes of the film constantly lifting the glasses up. Is it meant to be that dark? And that I think was a problem. So it's too long, it is too dark, and as inevitably will happen with any of these movies, it is a melee of things going on as opposed to one straight, clear through narrative. And towards the very end, when the huge, great big beasties and monsters start attacking, you do occasionally get reminded of, Transformers 3. All those things aside, it is a triumph that I enjoyed it as much as I did, that I liked the characters as much as I did, that I laughed as much as I did, and I think it says a lot that I didn't get bored, that I didn't get fed up with it. I think it's perfect. I think it's as good as we could have expected from what is essentially a great big, franchise cluster movie in which all these different things are brought together, and then you kind of have to wrestle through them to find the through line. There are no clean through lines in it, but it does a pretty good job of being entertaining, even when it's going off in 58 different directions.
There were 2 or 3 moments where I had a dangerous and radical thought.
Which was?
I quite enjoyed that 3D moment there.
Oh, really? When?
Yeah. In the final, in the final climactic moments, there are a couple of pretty smart uses of 3D. Just that I'd throw that in.
Okay, I didn't see any of them.
No. That doesn't surprise me at all, but I just thought I would acknowledge that they were there.
That's absolutely fine. I mean, I just think when you've got a DP, like Seamus McGarvey, who I think is a great cinematographer anyway, I don't see why you have to saddle him with 3D. I'd rather just watch his very finely constructed images in 2D.
Here's another opinion from someone who's wandered along to the O2. Your name is?
Jamie.
Where are you from, Jamie?
North London.
What do you think of Avengers Assemble?
Yeah, I liked it. They kept all the constituent elements from the previous films, and Josh Whedon's managed to keep the tone and all the other elements from that film, and I saw it in IMAX 3D actually, so I think...
Oh, now how does it look in IMAX?
Well, it's the first IMAX 3D film I saw, but it was very impressive, the 3D. Yeah.
There you go. See? He spotted it. Maybe it's just you, Mark.
He saw it in IMAX, brighter, clearer, better.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Penny Heel on this email has an interesting point, actually, which maybe you can help her with.
Go ahead.
I'm a regular listener, but a rather less regular cinema goer due to the demands of babysitting and or the difficulty of finding a film that will please both generations of the family. We've had a good run recently with The Muppets and Pirates. There are 4 of us, 42, 9 and 7. My problem is, now that I've remembered how good Joss Whedon is, because she also sneaked off to see other films.
Yeah.
I need to know if I can justify going to see Avengers Assemble with my 9-year-old daughter, even though it's a 12A. I would like to know, what kind of a 12A is it? Is it a strong 12 like Hunger Games or Woman in White that had to...
Woman in Black.
Had to be Woman in Black, sorry.
Woman in White was the sequel.
Had to cut to squeeze under the bar. Or is it a softer 12A which a 9-year-old who likes her superheroes and happily watched all the Harry Potter films would enjoy? Obviously, check the PPFC, but what would you say?
Well, the interesting thing about the certificate is there's one expletive in the film that is delivered by Loki that I don't think I'm going to repeat here, but it's a Chaucerian Anglo-Saxon expletive, which some of you may have read about. It's been repeated in many of the reviews, and I have to say,
I'd forgotten about that.
Have you? Well, yes. I was genuinely shocked. I thought, are you allowed to say that in a 12 certificate? It's okay because it sounds oldie English. It's like he let he flee a fart. It sounds fine because it's Chaucerian. But so there was that, but clearly, and I said to somebody, is that an issue? And he said, well, clearly not for anybody under the age of 112 or whatever it is. But that, I mean, in terms of the the action content, like it's nothing like in the same league as Hunger Games. I mean, Hunger Games, we said before, it's not to do with explicitness. It's to do with the with the darkness of tone, with the fact that Hunger Games is, although it's a fantasy and a futuristic fantasy, it does have this realistic element of children attacking and killing other children. There's nothing like that in this. This is, fantastical all the way through. I'm just not entirely sure that a 9-year-old would have the patience for a movie of that length. What's your
a 9-year-old who likes superhero films and sat through all the Harry Potters and was quite happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you've sat through the Harry Potters, you've seen much darker stuff. I mean, the last 2 Harry Potter films had much darker material than anything in this.
So it might just be...
Correct me if I'm wrong. Don't you think that's the case? There wasn't anything particularly in Avengers Assemble that stood out as being particularly dark or terrifying?
No, it'll be a 12 because of that word.
Yes.
And if it wasn't for that word, it might just be a PG. We've got another guest reviewer. What's your name?
Phil.
Where are you from, Phil?
London.
And what did you think of Avengers Assembled?
I thought it was big, loud fun, to be honest with you. I mean, I saw it yesterday in cinema about half full, and I'm not a really big superhero kind of movie guy. I like Iron Man, but the rest could take or leave it. But I've got to say, for this one, there was really good characterisation, really good, strong characters, and it was funny. And it was a lot more funny than I thought it was going to be. And actually, in the cinema, there were a couple of moments. There's one moment between Hulk and Loki, which if you've seen the film, you'll know it. And it got just a great laugh.
Yeah.
And it was just this really good sense of fun by a guy who's obviously really cares about these characters and actually putting his soul into it.
I think that's absolutely right, and I think that the sense of fun is right. Did you at all feel that it? I mean, this is inevitable because of how much they've got to get through. That it was too long.
I could have shaved about 20 minutes off. I mean, there was this whole bit about this council. I mean, I won't go into it too much, but I thought that was kind of like a bit of a hook on to the thing. But actually, the end bit, even though it was fast moving, you didn't get a sense that you were losing a sense of it. Whereas Transformers 3, for example, I hadn't the clue where everything was at the end of it. I mean, you were the things flying, robots here and everywhere.
OK, thank you very much. We have another voice on stage. Yes, madam, what's your name?
Sabrina.
Where are you from, Sabrina?
North West London.
OK, and what did you think of Avengers?
I absolutely loved it from start to finish, and being a big fangirl, you know, I was kind of worried that how would Joss handle all these big personalities on screen, but they all have their time, and it's just so much fun, and I laughed so much throughout it, and the best thing was the audience was really into it as well, so we were all clapping along, so I hope that happens across screens, and people really get into it.
Who stole the picture for you?
Mark Ruffalo, Hulk. Yeah, it was really nice to hear that side of the story and stuff, and his humour was just brilliant throughout it.
And did you see it in 2D or 3D?
I saw it in 3D, and it personally didn't add anything for me, so I'm looking forward to seeing it again in 2D.
Ah, well, there we
lighter.
go. Now, did you find that the opening was too dark because of the 3D?
Yeah, and because of where I was sitting, I was quite close to the screen as well. It was really dark and awkward, so I didn't really enjoy the opening of it, but yeah.
Thanks, Sabrina. Ryan Pollard on this email, after 4 years of build-up from the previous Marvel movies, I was very worried that the payoff in the form of the Avengers would fail to live up to all the hype and end up becoming another Transformers John Carter. However, after seeing it today, I think we can all rest easy. They pulled it off. Marvel's The Avengers is everything that we've been hoping for, an exciting superhero team-up film packed with memorable and iconic moments. The performances are brilliant all round, with Tom Hiddleston chewing the scenery as Loki. The CGI is spectacular, the narrative is in clean strokes, the 3D retrofitting is problematic, but that doesn't matter. This is a film I would recommend for everyone. Yes, sir, what's your name?
Khan.
What did you think, Khan?
Absolutely loved it. I have to admit, I had some reservations because I'm not a massive Mark Ruffalo fan. And I didn't quite know what he was going to do with Banner and Hulk, but I thought he captured it perfectly, and the balance between being green and being the scientist guy, I thought he did really, really well. And I thought they used Hulk very well for like the comedic elements and some slapstick stuff as well.
Khan, thank you very much indeed. I mean, that counts as a big thumbs up, doesn't it, really?
No, I think the fact that the comedy is making people laugh, as I said, I mean, I laughed more in that than I did in several. And also, the comparison to John Carter is very interesting because, you know, all you need to know what's right about Avengers Assemble, Marvel Avengers Assemble, which is a terrible title.
Can we just call it Avengers?
Yeah, can we just call it John Carter of Mars, actually? Is that you put it next to John Carter of Mars, and John Carter of Mars, no stars, no story, no spectacle, totally boring, awful, and loses a massive amount of money. Avengers Assemble, loads of stars, loads of story, loads of spectacle, and, you know, rips through and has jokes in it. And so, you know, that's an indication of how it can go wrong, how it can go right.
Email from Jonathan Groves says, I've just heard Robert Redford is at the Chiswick Roundabout.